Well, let's speak now to Chris McDonald, who is the CEO of the National Innovation Centre for Steel, the Materials Processing Institute. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, Sally. Thank you for inviting me on.
Tell me how your organisation fits in all of this.
So the Materials Processing Institute develops new technology primarily for the steel sector, and what we're focused on is decarbonisation. So trying to develop those technologies that help the steel sector to transition to a new green economy. And we work across all of the steel sites in the UK. And, personally, I've spent quite a lot of time working at Scunthorpe in both the ironworks and the steelworks. So I know a lot of people there as well. And, my first thought and my colleagues' first thought this morning are for the 260 people whose jobs are at risk on the plant, but also, as Naj just said as well, in the supply chain too.
And you are part of the supply chain, I suppose.
Yes, we are indeed. So we, British Steel is one of our clients. We develop new technologies to try and help British Steel as well improve efficiency and move to a new kind of green steel making as well. I don't expect that this will have any particular impact on us. We're a relatively small organisation. I think the impact is likely to be felt much more locally. All those companies that cluster around the steel plant that provide essential services, as well as the direct jobs of the people working in the coke ovens too.
Now, the news has felt on the cards for a while, certainly because we've been here, haven't we, before, in the past few years, really. What does it actually mean this time?
So I think this is somewhat different. So, all of us who work around the steel industry, and particularly many of your listeners, will be used to hearing announcements about job losses in the industry, and that's been due to high energy prices. It's been due to imports from other countries. But a decision to close the coke ovens is an irreversible decision. Once they're closed, they're closed. The cooling down process essentially destroys the oven. It's a one-way street. And this was always going to happen in due course. We always were going to transition away from a coal-based steelmaking process to greener steel production. But you have to transition from something to something. You can't just close. So alongside the closure, we need to see an announcement of what the investment looks like too. And right now, we're seeing billions of pounds of investment in new green steel making in Europe, in Canada, in the USA, and it's not happening in the UK.
So this could have been good news, couldn't it, if they'd waited and then waited for something that was available to those people who do work in the coke at the coke ovens to go and do something in a greener job and still have a job.
Well, ideally, Sally, you're absolutely right, and that's something that I've really been championing. But what we're not seeing is any investment in the UK at all. So where other countries are transitioning, the UK steel industry is collapsing essentially, and that's for two reasons. And I think British Steel put this out in their statement. One is it's very uncompetitive at the moment to make steel in the UK because our energy costs are far higher than our European competitors. Now, look, over the last year, we've all been struggling personally with high energy costs, but for energy-intensive industries in other countries, there's been a level of support and their energy prices are lower as well. We're talking about France, Germany, where their energy costs are about half what they are in the UK for similar industries. And then the second thing is this new investment requires support from government and from industry together, so generally half and half. And for a plant like Scunthorpe, we estimate that the cost of the transition could be a couple of £1 billion, maybe more than that. In other countries, government's paying half of that and the company's paying half of that, and we're not seeing that in the UK. So I'm concerned that this is essentially the thin end of the wedge. Unless we see lower energy prices and a commitment by government to invest as part of a big industrial strategy to green our economy, then we'll see our steel industry decline. And it's already small. So at the moment, our steel industry is only the same size as the steel industry in Belgium. So we're not doing particularly well.
And what needs to be done to change all of that? And who is it who needs to do it?
Well, we've got to see action by both the companies and by government. So we need a green industrial strategy from government that has real cold hard cash on the table for the steel industry. And I estimate that the government would need to put up about £3 billion to green the steel industry. But we also need £3 billion from the companies as well. So this isn't about government just handing money over. The money needs to be made available by government, and then the private sector money comes in alongside that. And to be clear, if we've got companies in the industry that won't commit their 50% of the funding, then they shouldn't get access to the taxpayers' money. But the UK can't do without a steel industry. So at that point, we should be finding other partners to work with. But what we can't afford to happen is to lose steelmaking capability in places like Scunthorpe and Port Talbot and Sheffield and those places too.
Now, I don't know a lot about steel making, but it seems to me that the coke ovens are something that they are integral. They're something that are essential to the steel making process. So what is it that is not going to be coming out of the doors of that factory now that the coke ovens are closed?
So, yeah, you're right, Sally. And I know, again, a lot of your listeners are really familiar with steel making, but for the ones who may be less familiar, the closure of the coke ovens means that we'll now be importing coke from overseas. So the steel plant will still run, but instead of buying coal and turning it into coke and putting it into our blast furnaces, we'll be bringing coke in. So already that's a problem for UK balance of trade. And it also means as well that when we make the coke, we make a lot of gases that are used to fuel the rest of the steel plant. So one of the things I'll be looking out for is, well, what investment is, as well as this closure of the coke ovens, there must also be some investment alongside that to allow the rail rolling mill in Scunthorpe, for instance, which is world class and supplies most of the UK's rail needs, to continue to function properly as well. There should be some investment there too. So it is crucial and integral to the operation of the whole site, and it will mean more imports and different costs elsewhere in the business too.
And given that it is integral and crucial, it doesn't look good for the future, does it? Does it seem like this is just the start? This is one of the 1,000 cuts.
So this is my worry, that given that this has been announced, but without any announcement in any green investment in what we call electric arc furnaces or hydrogen production or carbon capture and storage, these are the technologies that we're all talking about at the moment. We've just announced the closure. Then my worry is this a sort of short-term thing? Without any green investment, what does the future plan look like? So we heard the representative from the community union on earlier. I'm sure they will be concerned to know what is the forward strategy for the company in order to make it sustainable. But we need that, but we also need the investment from government to sit alongside that too.
Chris, thank you very much for your time today. Chris McDonald, the CEO of the Material Processing Institute. We'll hear more about that story a little later on in the programme.